Welcome back to the deep dive. I actually want to start today by asking you to visualize something. It's a bit of a mental exercise.
Okay.
So when you think of the United Nations, right, that massive complex in New York, what comes to mind?
Oh, it's a very specific vibe. You think of flags. Hundreds of colorful flags fluttering in the wind.
Right.
You think of diplomats in expensive suits, security councils, earpieces, debates about borders, war, famine, treaties.
Yeah.
It is a secular political hub, the town hall of the planet, essentially.
Exactly. It's a place of business, global business.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to wipe that image completely, just clear the slate,
Right.
replace it with the Kaaba, that stark black cube in the city of Mecca. What do you see now?
Well, the image shifts instantly. I mean, the suits are gone. I see white robes. I see pilgrimage. I see millions of people circling in this trance-like state. I see deep personal emotion, tears, prayer. It is a shrine.
A shrine.
It's a temple. It's the holiest site of a major religion.
Right. And that is the dominant image in the global consciousness. It's a place of worship. But, and this is the massive curveball we are throwing at you today, the listener. What if I told you that according to the source material we have in front of us, that temple image is actually a deviation?
Yeah, that's a wild thought.
What if the original blueprint for that black cube was actually closer to the United Nations example?
It is a really provocative thought.
It's more than provocative. It completely upends the narrative.
Yeah.
The documents we are looking at today argue that the Kaaba wasn't designed as a shrine for rituals or a temple for a deity to live in.
Right.
It was designed as a global operations room, a literal headquarters for a sort of League of Nations-style organization, but one with actual teeth.
Yeah.
A center designed specifically to solve world hunger and end human tyranny.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory when you put it that way, or maybe the plot of a thriller novel.
It really does.
But we are actually looking at a very serious, very scholarly set of commentaries. We are doing a deep dive into the Urdu writings of Ghulam Ahmed Pervez.
And just to set the stage for you, Pervez isn't your typical theologian, right? He's not sitting there debating how high to raise your hands during prayer or how long your beard should be.
Not at all, and it's a crucial distinction to make right at the start. Pervez is what you might call a systemic thinker.
Systemic thinker, yeah.
He looks at the Quran not as a book of liturgy or chants, but as a constitution.
Yeah.
He is looking for the mechanics of society.
He wants to know how the machine works.
Exactly.
Mechanics is the right word,
Yeah.
because the conflict we're going to explore today isn't between, believer versus non-believer.
Right.
It's a tension Pervez identifies between two very specific concepts, madhab and deen.
This is the foundation. If you don't get the difference between madhab and deen, nothing else Pervez says will make sense.
It's the key.
It is the key that unlocks his entire worldview.
So let's break it down. Section 1, the paradigm shift. In English, if I look up these words in a standard dictionary, I'd probably find both of them translated as religion.
You would. You absolutely would. And that is where the confusion and the tragedy in Pervez's view begins. He argues that while they are used interchangeably today, they are actually diametrically opposed concepts. He argues that madhab is what happens when a system rots.
Rots, that's a really strong word.
He uses very visceral imagery in the source text. He compares madhab or religion in the conventional ritualistic sense to a dead body.
A dead body.
Yes. Think about a living human being versus a corpse.
Okay.
A corpse still has eyes, hands, legs. Structurally, it looks like a human, but the spirit, the vitality, the movement is gone.
Wow.
Pervez argues that when a system, or deen, loses its spirit and purpose, it decomposes into madhab. It becomes a set of stagnant rituals.
So it just becomes personal, private, and completely disconnected from the collective reality.
Exactly.
So madhab's just going through the motions.
It's motion without movement. You bow, you prostrate, you chant, you count beads. But the social vitality is dead.
Right.
The crime rate doesn't go down. Poverty doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
Corruption remains rampant.
Yeah, the religion is just compartmentalized into a private corner of your life, having zero impact on the state or the economy.
And deen.
Right. What is deen then?
Deen, in his view, is the living organism. It is a socio-political system based on divine law.
Okay.
It is about the here and now. It is about governance, economics, sociology, and how we organize ourselves as a species.
So it's not about the afterlife.
No, deen is not about getting into heaven after you die. It's about creating a heavenly society while you are alive.
That is a massive distinction.
Yeah.
One is a private hobby, and the other is a public administration.
Exactly. And this brings us to the mission of our deep dive. We're looking at Perez's proposed architecture of universal brotherhood.
Right.
We aren't just discussing theology here. We are looking at how he redefines things like prayer, pilgrimage, and leadership into tangible civic duties.
We're talking about a system where the house of God is actually a house for the people. Let's stick with this dead body metaphor for a second longer, because the source material really leans into it. He talks about the transition from a camp to a mosque.
Yes. He argues that the Kaaba was originally established as a camp or a headquarters.
At headquarters.
Think of a military or administrative base. It's a place where orders are given, where strategy is planned, where resources are distributed.
Okay.
But over centuries, as the deen rotted into madhab, that headquarters turned into a temple.
A temple.
Instead of going there to receive orders for social reform, people started going there just to worship the building.
Worship the bricks.
Essentially, they started thinking the act of visiting was the goal rather than the mission you received at the visit.
And this touches on the universal scope of his argument. There's a linguistic point in the notes that really caught my eye. Perez points out that when the Quran addresses the Kaaba and its purpose, the audience isn't who we think it is.
It's a fascinating catch. He notes that the Quranic address regarding the Kaaba is almost always to an-nas.
An-nas meaning mankind.
Yes, mankind, the people, all of humanity. It is rarely addressed to al-mu'minun, the believers, or al-muslimin, the Muslims, in the exclusive sense.
Wow.
Perez argues the Kaaba was never meant to be the property of a specific sect or a specific religion. It was designed as a center for a universal brotherhood.
So in this view, if you turn it into a place just for Muslims to go and pray, or if you ban non-Muslims from entering, you've actually violated its original charter.
That is exactly Perez's argument. He says that when God calls the Kaaba my house, Beitur, it signifies a negation of human ownership.
Because if it belongs to God, no human can claim it.
Right. If it belongs to God, it cannot belong to a king, it cannot belong to a priest, it cannot belong to a specific government or any specific nation.
Yeah.
But belonging to God, it essentially belongs to everyone. It becomes the commons of humanity.
It's interesting because we usually think of religion as the thing that binds people together, but he's arguing that religion or madhab is actually what splinters people.
Precisely. Madhab creates factions. It creates us versus them.
Right.
It creates the saved and the damned. Deen, as a socio-political system under divine law, is meant to obliterate those factions and create a single human community.
The goal isn't a sect. It's a global family.
Yes.
But to build a global family or a global system, you need a leader. You need an architect.
Yeah.
And this brings us to section 2 of our outline. We have to talk about Abraham.
The patriarch.
The builder.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me because I grew up hearing stories about Abraham. Perez's take on him is, well, it's vastly different from the standard Sunday school or, I guess, madrasa version.
It is a complete reconstruction of his role.
Let's look at the traditional view first to set the contrast. The sources mention the 5 trials of Abraham. These are really famous in traditional commentaries. Abraham is tested by God, he passes the tests, and he is made a leader. What are the tests usually cited?
This is where Perez gets very critical, almost sarcastic.
He cites traditional commentaries, Tabari and others, that list the trials as trimming the mustache, cutting the nails, removing armpit hair, removing pubic hair, and circumcision.
Wait, I just want to make sure you heard that correctly. The creator of the universe, the architect of reality, says, Abraham, I'm going to make you the leader of all mankind, the imam of the planet.
But first I need to check if you trimmed your mustache correctly.
Yeah, it seems a bit disproportionate. Congratulations, your fingernails are short. Here are the keys to global leadership.
That is exactly the absurdity Perez is highlighting. He asks, quite pointedly, does it make any rational sense for God to appoint someone imam al-Nas, leader of mankind, just for passing a personal hygiene test?
It's wild when you put it that way.
Exactly. Perez argues that this trivializes the immense stature of Abraham. It reduces a revolutionary figure to a character in a beauty salon.
Wow.
He argues that these commentaries reflect the minds of the people who wrote them, people obsessed with ritual and appearance, rather than the reality of the Quranic text.
So Perez offers a reinterpretation. If the trials weren't about hair removal, what were they about?
He argues that Abraham's trials were monumental character-building challenges. This wasn't about grooming. It was about standing up to the greatest tyranny of his time.
Right.
Abraham stood against Nimrod.
Nimrod being the archetype of the tyrant king.
Yes, the absolute dictator who claimed to be a god. Abraham stood against the status quo of his entire society.
Hmm.
He challenged the priesthood of his father. He smashed the idols, which wasn't just about statues. It was about smashing the economic hold the priesthood had on the people.
The power structure.
Right. He was thrown into fire. Whether literal or metaphorical is another debate entirely, but he faced death for his principles.
He left his home. He migrated.
These were the trials.
So the leadership wasn't a reward for hygiene. It was a qualification proven through actual struggle.
Yes, he proved he could handle the leadership of mankind. And Perez defines this leadership using two very specific Urdu terms derived from the Quranic context.
Okay.
Basirat and Qadi-Bazu.
Basirat and Qadi-Bazu. These sound important. Let's unpack them.
Basirat means insight, vision, the ability to see the truth of things.
Yeah.
It is the intellectual capacity to understand how the universe works and what a just society looks like.
So the vision
Right.
and the other one.
Qadi-Bazu, literally it means strength of arm, but it represents power, capability, the ability to enforce and execute.
So you need both.
You absolutely need both. Perez gives us a formula here. Think about it in modern terms. If you have power Qadi-Bazu without insight Basirat, what do you get?
You get a tyrant, you get a pharaoh, you get a Nimrod.
Exactly.
You get a warlord who has the guns and the muscle, but no moral compass. Just brute force destroying everything.
Destruction and tyranny. Now flip it. What if you have insight, you see the truth, you have great ideas, you are a beautiful soul, but you have no power?
No Qadi-Bazu.
Right.
Then you're just a philosopher.
Perez calls it mere poetry.
Mere poetry.
It's ineffective. It's beautiful, perhaps, but it changes nothing in the real world. You can write lovely poems about justice, but if you can't implement them, the tyrant will just crush you.
So Abraham represented the perfect integration of both.
Yes, he had the moral vision, the Basirat, to know what a just society looked like. And he developed the power, the Qadi-Bazu, to actually lay the foundations for it.
That is a powerful leadership model.
Yeah.
It's not just might makes right, and it's not just thoughts and prayers. It's right back by might.
Correct. And once Abraham established this leadership capability, he was given a task. He wasn't told to build a temple for chanting.
Right.
He was told to build the headquarters. He was told to raise the foundations of the Kaaba.
Which brings us to section 3, the Kaaba as a global operations room.
I love that description, global operations room. It perfectly captures Perez's vision.
Perez says the Kaaba isn't a shrine owned by a sect. He calls it a sanctuary of peace, or am.
Yes.
He says it's an alam, a
What?
symbol, like a flag.
Think of a flag or a capital city. The physical building, the bricks and mortar, isn't the deity. We don't worship the White House.
Right.
We don't worship the Parliament building. The building represents the system. It represents the authority of the law.
Yeah.
Just as the White House represents the U.S. administration, the Kaaba represents the divine administration.
Now, there's a specific command given to Abraham and Ishmael regarding the Kaaba. They are told to purify my house, tahirabeti.
And again, we have to look at the traditional view versus Perez's systemic view.
Traditional view is very literal, right?
Yeah.
Clean the house.
Yes. Sweeping the floor, washing the walls with rose water, perfuming it with musk.
You see this today.
You do.
Yeah.
The ceremonial washing of the Kaaba is a huge event involving kings and dignitaries with brooms and scented water. It's considered a deeply pious act.
And Perez says?
He says, you don't need a prophet to use a broom.
That's such a practical take.
It is. He argues that God wouldn't give a divine command to two major prophets, the founders of this system, just to do janitorial work. In his view, purification here is political and systemic. It means cleansing the system of human subjugation.
Cleansing the system.
Yes, making the house free from non-divine influences.
What does that mean in practice?
That means creating a space where no human being bows to another human being. A place where there are no kings, no dictators, no priests claiming authority over others.
Oh, wow.
It is a zone of absolute freedom from human tyranny. That is the filth that needs to be swept out.
The filth is slavery.
The filth is slavery. The filth is oppression.
That drastically changes the meaning of the space. It's not about how clean the floors are, it's about how clean the politics are.
Precisely. And this leads directly to what Perez calls the bread issue.
A bread issue. I found this part really striking because we often separate economics and religion so neatly.
Oh, totally.
We think, I go to church or the mosque for my soul, and I go to work for my bread.
It is a classic dualism. Church versus state, spirit versus matter. Perwez argues this dualism is totally foreign to the Quranic worldview.
How so?
He points out that when Abraham laid the foundations of the Kaaba, his very first prayers were not for forgiveness of sins or entry into paradise.
What did he pray for?
He prayed for two things. First, amen, absolute security, and second, risk economic sustenance.
Security and food.
Security and food. The argument is you cannot have spiritual development if you are starving or terrified.
That makes a lot of sense.
A true divine system, a true deen, must guarantee freedom from fear and freedom from hunger. If a system fails to feed its people or protect them, it cannot claim to be a divine system.
So Perwez is saying that the bread issue, getting food on the table, is actually a religious issue.
He is saying it is the foundational religious issue. He criticizes those who say discussing food in a mosque is worldly.
Right.
He says Abraham established the Kaaba specifically to solve that problem. If you are preaching to a man whose stomach is empty, you are wasting your time.
First, fill his stomach.
Then talk to his soul.
There's a really interesting analogy in the source material here about the farmer. It distinguishes between natural law and divine law. I want to spend a minute on this because it explains why sometimes godless nations are rich and religious nations are poor.
This is crucial for understanding Perwez's economic view. He uses the farmer to explain the difference between the laws of nature and the laws of deen.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Imagine two farmers. One is a devout believer, let's call him Abdullah. He prays 5 times a day. He's very pious. He has a long beard.
Okay.
The other is a Hindu, Ramdas.
Abdullah and Ramdas.
Now, Perwez says if Ramdas plows the field correctly, uses the right fertilizer, understands the seasons, and waters the crops at the right time.
Yeah.
And Abdullah just prays, but doesn't farm well or uses bad seeds or is lazy, who gets the crop?
Ramdas gets the crop. Nature doesn't care about your theology.
Exactly. Fire burns the believer and the non-believer equally. Gravity pulls them both down. These are natural laws.
They are neutral.
They operate on cause and effect. God doesn't intervene to change the physics of farming just because you pray.
So where does deen, the divine law, come in? If it doesn't help you grow the wheat, what is it actually for?
Deen kicks in regarding distribution and usage. Once the crop is harvested, how is it shared? Who gets to eat? Does the strong take it all? Does the farmer hoard it while his neighbor starves? Does the king take 90% in taxes?
I see. So natural law is how you produce the bread. Divine law is how you ensure everyone gets a slice.
Perfect. Yes. Perwez argues that the West and other non-Muslim nations have mastered natural law.
Right.
They respect the laws of science, organization, and production, so they have abundance. But the system of the Kaaba was supposed to master the divine law of equitable distribution.
Ensuring no one goes hungry.
Exactly.
But the irony, of course, is that Perwez looks at the Muslim world and sees they have neither.
That is his lament. He sees the house of God surrounded by oil wealth, yet poverty is rampant. He argues the system has been abandoned for rituals.
They aren't mastering the science natural law to produce.
And they aren't mastering the deen divine law to distribute. They have failed on both counts.
Speaking of rituals, this brings us to section 4. And honestly, this was the aha moment for me reading the sources. Perwez takes the standard rituals of Hajj and prayer and decodes them into job descriptions.
It is a radical linguistic reinterpretation. He claims that over centuries, active terms became passive rituals.
Let's go through them. First up, tawaf.
Tawaf. Traditionally, this is the act of circumambulation, walking around the Kaaba 7 times during Hajj or Umrah.
Right.
It is a deeply spiritual act for millions.
You walk around the cube, but Perwez says...
He looks at the root of the word. Tawaf relates to patrolling or guarding. Think of a sentry walking the perimeter of a camp.
So a tawaf isn't a walker, he's a watchman.
Exactly. A chowkidar, the watchman of humanity. Perwez argues that the people of this system, the custodians of the Kaaba, are supposed to be the global patrol force. Their duty is to patrol the world to ensure everyone sleeps in peace. They are the guardians of human rights.
That is a massive shift. You're not walking in circles for your own salvation. You're patrolling the earth for everyone else's safety.
It turns an introvert act into an extrovert duty. It's not about me circling God. It's about me circling humanity to protect it.
Okay, next one.
Itikaf. Itikaf. Traditionally, this is seclusion. You go into the mosque, usually during the last 10 days of Ramadan, you set up a little curtain and you pray and read Quran.
You isolate yourself from the world.
It's a retreat, a spiritual timeout.
So what's the active version?
Perwez says the root meaning of And the associated terms for itikaf relate to stringing pearls or combing hair to untangle it.
Combing hair.
Yes, think of a tangled mess of hair. It takes patience, focus, and gentle manipulation to get the knots out.
Okay.
Itikaf, in his view, is the meticulous, patient intellectual work of untangling complex social knots.
Oh, I love that imagery.
It is the work of solving difficult societal problems. You sit down, you focus, and you untangle the mess. And the stringing pearls aspect means taking scattered individuals, people who are isolated or divided, and stringing them into a unified community.
So itikaf isn't hiding from the world in a mosque. It's locking yourself in a room to solve the world's hardest problems.
It is a think tank. It is a conflict resolution summit. It is the intellectual labor required to build a brotherhood.
That's incredible.
It's not checking out of society. It's checking into the hardest parts of it.
That is, wow. Okay, the third one. Ruku and sujud, bowing and prostration.
Traditionally, these are the physical postures of prayer. Bending at the waist, putting the head on the ground.
And for Perwez?
He views sujud not as touching your forehead to the rug, but as complete practical submission to the law.
Submission to the law.
Think about it this way. If the law says feed the poor and you feed the poor, you have performed sujud.
Because you submitted to the instruction.
Exactly. But if you physically bow your head to the floor, but then you go out and cheat your customers or ignore the poor or take bribes, have you performed sujud?
No, you've just done yoga.
Exactly. Perwez argues that sujud is about bending one's will to the collective good, implementing the system that guarantees safety and food.
All right.
It is about aligning your personal will with the divine will, which is the welfare of humanity.
So if we combine these images, Perez is painting a picture of a society where worship is actually the active administration of justice.
Yes. The worshipers are the civil servants, the peacekeepers, the judges, the economists, the social workers.
They are untangling the hair of society's problems. They are patrolling the borders of safety. They are submitting to the rule of law.
And the Kaaba is the headquarters from where all this is coordinated.
It sounds like a utopia, but it also sounds like a lot of work. Who is supposed to run this? This brings us to section 5, the middle nation.
The Ummati Wasat.
The Quran mentions this term. We have made you a middle nation. Usually people interpret this as moderate, not too extreme, not too lax, just in the middle.
Perwez takes it more literally in a geometric and geopolitical sense. He connects it back to the Kaaba's role as the center.
The center is equally distant from all points on the circumference.
Exactly. The equal distance doctrine.
Right.
Perwez argues that the custodians of this system, this middle nation, must function as the convener of global brotherhood. But to do that fairly, they cannot be on anyone's side.
They have to be impartial.
Absolutely impartial. Imagine you are the referee in a football game. Can you wear the jersey of one of the teams?
No. If the referee is wearing a Manchester United jersey, the game is rigged.
Exactly. The middle nation cannot be East or West. They cannot be capitalist or communist. They cannot be biased toward one race or one region.
They must maintain equal distance.
Equal distance from all other nations to judge disputes solely on merit and justice.
That's remarkably similar to the ideal of the United Nations, or maybe the Red Cross, or an independent judiciary.
It is. The goal, Perwez says, is for this nation to be shohada witnesses over mankind.
Witness.
They watch over humanity, not to control them, but to ensure no one is oppressed. They are the referees of the global game. But a referee can't play the game.
And Perwez is saying the Muslim community was designed to be the global referee, but instead they just became another team on the field.
A team that is often fighting amongst itself, no less. He argues they lost that equal distance. They put on the sectarian jersey.
Yeah.
They became just another faction, another religion fighting for dominance. And when the referee abandons his post to join the brawl, the game turns into chaos.
This is heavy stuff. It really strips away the, I don't want to say magic, but the mysticism of it all, and replaces it with this heavy responsibility.
It replaces mysticism with accountability. It says you are not special because you chant a prayer. You are only special if you perform the duty of the watchman.
Which segues perfectly into section 6, self-consciousness and the return. Because if you realize you've messed up, if you realize you're just a team and not the referee, how do you fix it?
This brings us to the concept of tawbah.
Repentance.
Usually we think of repentance as saying, I'm sorry, God, I sinned. Maybe crying a bit, asking for forgiveness. It is an emotional, personal reset.
Right. It's about feeling bad and promising to do better.
Perwez contrasts this with the Christian concept of atonement or original sin. He says Taba isn't just saying sorry, it is a navigational term,
Navigational.
like GPS.
Exactly like GPS.
Yeah.
Imagine you are driving toward a destination. You take a wrong turn. You are now heading away from the goal.
Okay.
Taba is the act of stopping, calculating your position, realizing you are wrong, and physically turning the vehicle back to the correct path.
Recalculating.
Yes, it is an active correction of the collective trajectory. It's not enough to sit in the car and say, I'm sorry I took the wrong turn, while still driving in the wrong direction. You have to turn the wheel.
So for a nation, Taba would mean changing your policies, changing your economic system.
Correct. If your system creates poverty, Taba isn't praying for the poor, it's changing the economic laws so poverty is eliminated.
Wow. If your system allows tyranny, Taba is removing the tyrant. It is action.
And this links to the idea of Khudi, or self-consciousness. The source material mentions Allama Iqbal here, the famous poet-philosopher.
Perwez was deeply influenced by Iqbal. Iqbal's concept of Khudi is about the developed self.
The self.
The idea is that this entire system, the Kaaba, the bread, the security, isn't just to keep humans like well-fed cattle.
Right, because you can have a prison where everyone is fed and safe, but it's still a prison.
Exactly. A benevolent dictator can give you and risky security and food, but that doesn't make you a full human being.
Right.
The ultimate goal of the system is the self-actualization of the human being, the development of the zat, the self.
There's a quote in the notes, "He who denies his creator is a kafir. He who denies his own self is a greater kafir."
It is a profound statement. To deny your own potential, to accept a life of subjugation, to fail to develop your own moral compass, that is the ultimate tragedy.
Yeah.
The system, Dean, is designed to create an environment where the self can grow freely, unencumbered by the fear of hunger or the fear of a tyrant.
So the global operations room isn't just about logistics. It's about creating the conditions for human greatness.
Yes, it is about creating a world where every individual has the freedom and the resources to discover who they truly are.
So let's try to synthesize this. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
We started with the idea that religion madhab is a stagnant, ritualistic thing, and Perwez wants to move us to deen, a living social order.
Yes, the difference between a corpse and a living athlete.
We looked at Abraham not as a guy passing a hygiene test, but as a revolutionary leader combining power and insight.
The architect of the system.
We saw the Kaaba not as a temple, but as a global HQ for peace and economics, solving the bread issue.
And providing security.
We decoded the rituals. Tawaf is patrolling, kaf is problem solving, sujud is submission to the law.
Making the mystical mechanical.
And finally, the middle nation as the impartial guardian or referee of this system.
The ones who keep the game fair.
It's a grand vision. I mean, it's massive. It takes these ancient texts and turns them into a manifesto for a world government of sorts, but a benevolent one.
It is a blueprint for a utopia, essentially. But Perwez would argue it is a practical blueprint, not a dream.
Right.
He would say it worked once under the Prophet and the early caliphate, and it can work again if we stop treating the Quran as a book of chants and start treating it as a constitution.
It really challenges the modern separation of church and state. In Perwez's view, you can't separate them.
You cannot, because spirituality is expressed through the state. Spirituality is expressed through how you feed the hungry.
That brings us to our final provocation for you, the listener. We always like to leave you with something to chew on.
Indeed.
We talked about the bread issue. Perwez argues you cannot be spiritual while ignoring the physical suffering of your neighbor. So here is the question. If we accept this definition, that worship is actually public service and ensuring security, how does that change your view of what it means to be a religious person today?
It is a confronting question. If you spend all night praying, but your neighbor goes hungry, have you worshipped?
Yeah.
Perwez would say no. You have merely performed a ritual. You have played with the dead body of religion, but you have missed the living spirit of Deen.
And if the house of God is actually a house for the people, maybe we need to stop looking at the sky for miracles and start looking at our own streets, our own policies, and our own responsibilities.
That is the essence of the message. The miracle is in the system we build, not the rituals we perform.
On that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. A huge thank you to the research team for digging up these Urdu commentaries. It's dense stuff, but man, does it make you think.
It certainly does.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.